only taken 3 bloody years, but budget-friendly graphics cards have arrived. Nvidia has today announced the RTX 4060 and RTX 4060 Ti, two graphics cards that will start at roughly $300 and $400 respectively, and AMD, if recent rumours are to be believed, are also set to launch the RX 7600 at about $299. Now granted, this still isn't the rock bottom pricing of the good old days, but compared to what we've had the last few years with the pandemic, I think we'll take it. Let us start with the facts. The RTX 4060 Ti is actually launching next week, and we have all of the details confirmed in black and white. Performance levels will range anywhere between 15% faster in classic rasterization versus an RTX 3060 Ti, all the way up to 70% faster when using DLSS 3 frame generation. Compare that to an RTX 2060 Super, and you're looking at up to 2.6 times the performance. And if you're after my personal take on this, it's essentially that it's not exactly a huge jump in rasterization. I think most of us would be looking for a little bit more, maybe between 20 and 30% for the next generation. But then again, when you consider what other graphics cards are doing, which is pretty much going up in price and by quite a lot, and with inflation and things all happening at the moment, the usual Nvidia tax, more performance for more or less the same price, I suppose, is actually a win. I mean, let's not forget that the RTX 3060 Ti that this is replacing was always my favourite card of the previous generation, as the bang for buck was excellent, it came with loads of cool features like DLSS and support for decent ray tracing, and it had the horsepower for 1440p gaming in pretty much every title. The question that I'm asking myself though is whether the games have actually got more than 15% more demanding, because if this is the case, then essentially we've almost lost a bit of value. I know games like Apex Legends and multiplayer titles are pretty much staying about the same, but ultimately graphics cards do need to keep up with the games that they're going to be playing, and while DLSS and better ray tracing is going to certainly fit the bill, what about basically everything else? I'll be benchmarking this card as soon as I can, but for now, Nvidia has given us oodles of benchmark data to show that this is a 1080p monster, netting over 60 FPS in every single ray trace game, with most surpassing 120 FPS. The thing is though, I would argue that anyone spending £400 to upgrade their graphics card is probably looking to play at 1440p either now or maybe into the future. So not including any benchmarks I think is a little bit disappointing. If you do want to see how this performs at 1440p in games like Fortnite, Warzone, Apex Legends, then just get subscribed, because that's what we're going to be testing. Buyer beware though, as there is a slight catch to all of this, and that's actually that there are two versions of the 4060 Ti. There's an 8GB and a 16GB. And yes, I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no. They're all but identical other than the memory configuration. But here's the thing, it's an extra $100 if you want to access that 16GB variant, which personally I think is a tad steep, especially when AMD is bound to launch a higher memory card for the same $399 price, though of course we currently have no idea when or if this will actually be. $75 would have been a fairer ask in my eyes. And again, a reminder, all of the benchmarks that we've seen have been running at 1080p at pretty much max or near max settings, not at 1440, that, guess what, needs more memory. So will 8GB be enough? Only time will tell. Let's press on to the next graphics card though, our RTX 4060. And I have to say that this card looks like an efficiency monster, using just 110 watts while gaming, which essentially means you can save a ton of money and buy a cheaper PSU. Just like the 4060 Ti, this packs 8GB of VRAM and a much larger 24MB of L2 cache, which essentially brings up the effective memory speed despite the smaller 128-bit memory bus. And I've got to admit, this is a bit of a weird one, because the 3060 actually had 12GB of VRAM, so somehow we've gone from 12 to 8. Not really sure how we can spin that one positively. Oh, it's a 1080p card, you don't need the extra VRAM! We'll see, Nvidia. We'll see. On a brighter note, Nvidia has once again provided us with some provisional performance numbers, and this time it's actually 20% faster versus a 3060, and then again up to 70% faster with frame gen enabled. Putting this into practice, that's still 60 FPS or higher in every single game tested, even with ray tracing, though of course the card is a decent amount slower than the more expensive Ti. But hey, if you ask me, you really can't argue with the capabilities of this one. It genuinely does look set to be a flexible little powerhouse. For anyone that's not really interested in having having big screens and heavy resolutions. Now, other than the obvious memory debate that everyone's going to be talking about, the only real concern I have is actually all about latency and DLSS 3.0, because when I tested this card, spoiler alert, this is a 4070, not a 4060, the latency with DLSS in some of the more heavy tasks was not quite as good as it was on some of the higher end cards, and I'm wondering whether 60 FPS on the 4060 is actually going to feel like 60 FPS once you've got all of the frame gen tech enabled, because there wasn't really anything mentioned about this in the charts at all, but usually Nvidia like to talk about latency to try and show how good they are at it. So I wouldn't say I'm concerned, but it is definitely something we'll be thoroughly testing. But anyway, that's enough about Nvidia and Team Green. Forget about them. Let's move on to AMD. Place your tinfoil hats on, ladies and gentlemen, because this bit is all based on leaks and rumors. But as the launch date is apparently next week as well, I think it's safe to assume that it's going to be very close to the money. And AMD seem to be skipping the 7800 and 7700, at least for now, in favour of hitting that mid-range sweet spot. Leaks show that RX 7600 packs 8GB of VRAM, has 32 compute units, and operates on a PCI Gen 4 8X lane. And this last bit is definitely a fair bit more important than it might first sound, as if you're rocking an older generation motherboard that currently operates on PCI Gen 3, well, the potential of this card may not actually live up to your expectations and you'd be leaving extra performance on the table. Quite how much performance this actually is a little bit more unknown, as we just don't have any benchmarks yet. But bear in mind that the RX 6600 can run Apex Legends at about 150 FPS at 1080p, well, you'd like to think that its replacement could get that closer to 200, which would be pretty darn mean for an affordable GPU. And the thing is, there's definitely a lot riding on the successor to this, and there's almost more for AMD to gain but also lose than Nvidia, because if you're not impressed with the 12% rasterization performance of the 4060 Ti, Nvidia can say, well, we're still going to charge you a price premium because you've got DLSS 3.0, frame gen, better ray tracing, this is as much a software upgrade as it is a hardware upgrade, so you're going to get loads more out of this GPU. Whereas for AMD, they don't really have that. I mean, yes, I'm sure the ray tracing will be better and there'll probably be an AV1 encoder baked into that, but when everyone else has got that as well, you're going to be relying a lot more on the raw performance of this and the price to performance in order for you to purchase it, because in theory, Nvidia are currently winning when it comes to software and just extra features and things, so it's going to be an interesting one. As consumers, we can't really lose, as Nvidia's cards are essentially the same price as the ones that they replace, and as AMD launched the 6600 for $329, it looks as if they're going to be going under their old price. More performance for less money? Are we dreaming? But what exactly... oh crap. But what exactly will the performance of these cards be, and who will come out on top? Nvidia? AMD? Or you? Let me know down in the comment section below, which one are you more excited about? What are you using at the moment? What are you going to be upgrading? And ultimately, which is going to be the best card? Smash the like button if you've enjoyed this, get yourself subscribed, and we'll catch you next week for some benchmarks.